Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a message that was forwarded to me by one of our admins. The message reads like this: Hello my brother, how are you? Can you please post for me as anonymous? I am a 46-year-old man who was once married to a Zimbabwean woman. I am here looking for any kind of spiritual help that I can get, because I've been trying to run around, but I've seen that a lot of guys, they are just looking to get my money, like ripping me off without solving any of my problems. Me and my wife, before we got separated, we used to stay together. I was then told by this other prophet that I had to get separated from my own wife, and since me and my wife, we were always fighting, that is when I decided that I should become the bigger man and move out of the house. Then I left my wife with my kids in our family house. I then moved into our other house because we have 3 properties that we have. Me and my wife, we met on the street. She was a lady of the night, and after convincing her, we finally moved in together. But before we moved in together, I was afraid of getting married, because before I had gotten married to this woman, I was someone who had many girlfriends, and there was one lady who I then dated. She was married and also from Zim, and the husband one day caught us. The day that he caught us, I had gone to collect that lady that I was dating at her workplace, because she was working for these other Indians as a stay-in maid. So since she was working as a stay-in, I never knew that she was married, because from Monday to Friday, I would go and meet up with her. Then we'll just talk whilst we'll be sitting in the car, and she lied to me that she was not married. I only found out that she was married after dating her for several months. The day that we were caught by her husband, I drove off whilst he fought with his wife. I then told that woman over the phone that I didn't love her anymore, because she had lied to me and she had said that she was not married, but she was married. I tried moving on with my life, but I kept on thinking about that woman, because she had totally confused me so much in bed. She was too much good in bed. I then called her one night when I was really feeling so lonely about her, and I told her that I wanted her back in my life, and I convinced her to run away from her workplace and to run away from her husband. Then she came and we started to stay together. But this woman, she was not honest at all. What she would do is that whenever I'll be at work, and as a person who was always at work, what she would do is that she started cheating with a lot of guys. She would even invite her own husband to my house. On many nights when I would not come back to my house, she would then invite her husband. Then they will sleep together in my bed. Then her husband stole some of my boxer shorts and went with them to Zim. That is how he managed to bewitch me, and I could not perform anymore in bed. And what surprised me is that my manhood started getting smaller and smaller. When me and my current wife went to Zim to fix this problem, we were told that the man whom I had stolen his wife, he had gone to a traditional healer, and they had used my dirty boxer shorts and my towel, that little cloth that women use to clean themselves after intercourse. Those items were stolen. So what they did, my brother, is that the witch doctor and that man whom I had stolen his wife, they took those items and they placed those items inside of a tortoise shell, and they let that tortoise to go into the forest. That is how they locked my manhood so that it cannot work again. The day that it first happened, me and that woman, we were in bed. We tried making love, but my manhood was so small. But we failed to make love. Then overnight, I woke up and I realized that my manhood was getting smaller and smaller. It was actually smaller than my testicles. This really shocked me, and I was angry because that woman previously, she had given me drop. So I thought that maybe she had cheated on me again, even though I knew that she always cheated on me. But I was so addicted to her because of the sex that she used to give me. So I was angry, thinking that she had given me another sexually transmitted disease. I left for work with the intention of me going to the clinic, but I then came back home because the alarm system kept on ringing. That is when the security company that had the alarm on my house called me because they wanted access to my house. When I came back from work, that is when I realized that she had ran away. And the reason why the alarm had went off, it was because she had tried to access the safe that was in my house and she had failed. When I came back home, I tried to get rid of her over the phone because even though I knew that she had stolen some items from me, but I was ready to forgive her because this was the woman that I thought I was going to eventually get married to because of the way that she used to perform whenever we were in the bedroom. But where she went, I don't know, because her phone kept on, because she kept on dropping my calls whenever I tried to call her. I stayed like that. This was from 2013 until 2015, until I met my current wife. All along, I no longer dated women, but what I would do is that I would only buy from those women that sell their bodies in the street because my manhood was so small. So the other women that I used to go and buy from, they used to laugh at me whenever they would look at how my manhood was so small, until I met that woman who later became my wife, because even from the very first day, she only looked at my manhood and she didn't even judge me at all. So what I did is that I used to buy a lot from her. Whenever I felt that I wanted to be with a woman, I would go and purchase the services from her. We dated until one Christmas. That is when I went with her to meet her people back there in Zim. When I was there, one of her uncle came. This man was the brother to my mother-in-law. So we spoke and he said to me it was in their culture for him to know if everything was good in our relationship. And I suspect that my wife was the one who had told her uncle this secret. That is the reason why he came and he spoke with me. Since he seemed to be a very good man, I then told him about my problems and how they started. He then took me to this local traditional healer who started helping me. He took this other fruit which grow very long. It is called the sausage tree. So that traditional healer forced my manhood into one of those fruits, and the ritual was done, and things started to heat up again in the bedroom, and my manhood became normal again. That was when my wife agreed to marry me. She said that the reason why she kept on refusing my offer for her to come and stay with me, she was afraid that maybe she would end up cheating on me. But when she saw that the problem had been sorted out, she agreed to come and stay with me. We stayed like that until we had our first child, and we had our second and our third child. All along, I had my swimming pool fixing business. I was always around rich people, mostly whites only. One day, I was called to fix someone's swimming pool. And when I went there, I then spoke with one of their guests who was a Chinese man. And that man said that he wanted some rhino horn or gold or anything like that. I told that man that I had no plan to get those items. When I returned back home, as I was just having a conversation with my wife, as we spoke, I then told her about that man that was from China and all the items that he wanted from me. Then my wife then told me that her brothers back who were in Zim will make a plan for the gold, but we had to go to Zim and we were supposed to use my car to go there and collect the gold. So I agreed. After that, we traveled to Zim, and this was my first time for me to touch gold. They picked up the gold, then we came back here to South Africa. My brother-in-laws, they made their money, but before we traveled back to South Africa, they said that we had to go and visit this very powerful witch doctor. This witch doctor, he was from that same area, and we had to be strengthened and give some powers so as to make the police feel very lazy to stop you as we were traveling along the way, since we had some illegal stuff in the car. My wife comes from a place that is in Guruve. We were given a very small doll like the ones that kids play with, but this doll, it was very different because when you touch it, it was so soft like marshmallows, and it was made of clay. And my brother-in-law was given a needle, which my brother-in-law was supposed to use as I was busy driving. Like if we were to see a roadblock ahead, he would then pin that needle into the doll, and he would start to twist and turn that needle until we would have passed the roadblock. So he did. By him twisting the needle, it will make the police to lose focus and ignore our car. After we had successfully arrived back home, I then took my brother-in-laws so that they can meet up with that Chinese man, and they went back to Zim, but they left the doll behind. Then when my businesses started going down, I then consulted with that traditional healer, but this I did in secret. But my brother-in-law, he knew all of these things that I was doing because I was planning with him. When my business started going down, I consulted with him, and then he told me that he would go and consult with that traditional healer on my behalf. So he knew this secret. That traditional healer then said, since I had his JUJU doll here with me here in South Africa, there was no need for me to travel to Zim for the rest of the rituals. But what I was supposed to do was to buy some clothes for my mother and give my mother those brand new clothes, and I was supposed to ask her to wear those clothes whilst I waited for her. So after purchasing those clothes, I traveled back home and I stayed with my mom. I then took out the brand new outfit that I wanted her to wear for the rituals, as I was instructed to do by that traditional healer. My mother, who knew nothing, took those brand new clothes and she wore them. We then went shopping. When we were at Boxer supermarket, that is when my mom started bleeding from her nose. We returned back home, and as I had been instructed to do, I asked for money from her, and she was surprised. But I told her that since she was my mother, I just wanted some money from her. She laughed. Then she went to her bedroom. Then she handed me a 10 rand note, and I took that money. When I was at my house, I then took that 10 rand note and I pinned that money to that JUJU doll. The next morning when I woke up, I saw that the doll had blood around its face, and this is how my mother passed away. She was hit by a car and her head was split open because of the huge impact. That traditional healer told me not to attend my mother's funeral because he couldn't come to South Africa in time. He said that he didn't even expect that my mother will die so soon, and he had traveled to Tanzania where he was attending one of his clients whom he said was a politician, and he had fallen sick. So he could not leave that man because he was quite a powerful man. So I had to wait in line. Since he could not come to South Africa to finish off the ritual that we had started, I failed to attend my mother's funeral. Then 2 months after the death of my mother, that was when that traditional healer told me that he was going to visit me here in South Africa, and I had to prepare his money because he had charged me about 15 cattle, and for one cow he said that his asking price, he wanted something like 6,500 rands at that time. I had already sold my baggy and kept the money for him so that by the time that he will come here, I'll be giving him his money. When he came, I gave him his money. Then he asked if I could take him to where my mother was buried. He wanted to see my mother's grave, and I had not yet even gone to the place where my mother was buried. So me and him, we drove off back to our village where I grew up. And when we got there, we had to park the car somewhere else because the graves back in our village are just next to the village. So if we were going to use the car, people would see us. Since I grew up there, I knew the place like the back of my hand. We parked the car by the main road and we entered into the small bush that is used for cow grazing until we had reached the fence of the graveyard. We entered into that graveyard and then I started to look for my mother's name. Once we had located her grave, that man, he had a 5-liter bottle of water. He then handed me that 5-liter bottle of water. He then told me to bath myself whilst I was standing right next to my mother's grave. After that, we left the doll on my mother's grave. We only dug a little bit and buried that doll. That traditional healer then gave me some herbs to use on the day when we will do a function for my mother, so that my relatives won't ask me a lot of questions. And he told me that I was supposed to buy my mother a tombstone for her grave and install that tombstone, but I had to do it without informing any of my relatives, and I did this in secret. I just went and I purchased that tombstone. After it was made, I went and I installed my mother's tombstone. I was alone. I was only with those guys that had made that tombstone for my mother's grave. I did this in 2017. After I did all of these rituals, I started earning a lot of money in my business. But last year, I had a very strange dream. I saw myself sleeping in a coffin. I was sleeping in this coffin with my mother, and I called that man again once I had woken up, because this was quite a strange dream. Then after I had called that man, he then told me that he wanted me to give him my car. At that time, I had just purchased another car. It was a VW Amarok. My brother, I could not even give him that car because it was really expensive and it was still brand new. So how could I ever give him my brand new car? When I told him that he was asking too much from me, he then told me that then he can't assist me anymore. In 2020, my problems came back again. Sometimes what will happen is that when me and my wife would be in bed, I would only last for about 30 seconds. Then one evening, my manhood stopped working completely. I then moved out of the house because me and my wife, we had been fighting a lot, and I didn't want my children to be raised in a family whereby me and my wife will be fighting all the times. So I decided to become the bigger man and move out of the house. Sometimes I would even have a problem of seeing my mother. Sometimes I can even see my mother whilst I am driving. She will be just standing in the middle of the road. Or if I am in the house, if I was to look outside, I will see her as well. The reason why I moved out of the house, it is because I am afraid that my mother, she will end up killing all of my children. This I was told by one prophet who then encouraged me to be separated from my wife until this whole thing is sorted out. As for now, I am looking for any kind of spiritual help. I have tried to reach out to my in-laws who are back in Zim, but now they are even avoiding me because I used to be very violent towards my wife because we were having a lot of fights, and that prophet that was trying to help me, he told me that me and my wife, we love each other. Even now that my wife is back in Zim with my kids, that prophet told me that even in her heart, she feels that she still loves me. But there is a problem that is there. My mother, she is claiming that I am now her husband. That is why he advised me to be separated from my wife until this whole thing is sorted out. He told me that if you do not get separated from your wife, I am afraid that you will end up killing each other, and your mother is going to cause you to kill your wife. So I decided to be separated from my wife. The other reason why I think that my wife left without telling me anything, I think that she might have seen something that scared her for her to run away like this, because she never gave me any notice. She just ran away. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that I received, and this message, it was forwarded to me by one of our admins. Strange things do happen in this world.